Welcome to On Point. Good morning. I'm Andy Martins for Tuesday, January 7th, 2020, live on TV and live on Facebook. Today, if I'm more thrilled than I usually am, it's because Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen is on the show. She was my choice. Her win in 2018 was #1 in my top 10, and she's the Councillor of the Year for 2019. We'll talk to Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen right after these messages. Welcome back to On Point. I'm Andy Martins for the second show of the new year and a new decade. And Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen was the first guest on Point when we started doing it in June of 2019, and also on Civic Affairs 1 year ago. I'm thrilled to welcome Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen. Thank you for making time, Lisa.
Well, thank you for having me, Andy, and certainly a Happy New Year to everyone watching today and to yourself as well.
Thank you very much. Same to you. Now, Lisa, your thoughts on the first year of the term is gone. How have you been feeling, and what's your thoughts on the first year being completed?
I think for all of us, of the 10 councillors, you had 5 new councillors. And really, the first few months is getting used to just the process and going to the meetings and feeling more comfortable in the chair and being able to ask those important questions and just getting through those logistics.
Right.
Definitely was a challenge, and also getting more comfortable in that seat. I remember my first meeting, I was extremely nervous, and now it's just, you go in and you grab your water and your coffee and you sit down and you get to work. So really much more feeling comfortable in that environment, which I think is really important, and really thrilled to be a part of some of the committees that I'm on. At the first year, I really wanted to be out of my comfort zone, not doing what a lot of people expected, such as getting involved into the arts and heritage in our community, which, while I certainly support, that's something I've done in my professional life, so I wanted to stretch my boundaries. So Police Services Board, chair of the Finance Committee, I'm sitting around the Social Equity Committee table, Downtown Association Board, and obviously the accessibility committee is important to me, and also being able to just to contribute in a different way for my community is really rewarding for me in this first year.
That's awesome. I know I was at that first meeting, and you really prepare a lot for each council meeting, much like I do for this show. You just can't come without the preparation, and all the questions you ask in council are well thought out and just not, you can't ad lib, is what I'm getting at.
No, I think it's important to ask meaningful questions. Sometimes I may be more vocal at a meeting, sometimes quieter. Quite often that could be because a question I had already been asked and answered. And it's really about reading your material. So I'm not going to ask a question just for question's sake. If I've read the material and if I understand the material, unless I need a clarification in making a decision, or if I'm not really sure of what is being communicated to me, then I will ask a question. Or if there's something that's been brought forth to me by a constituent that is of importance, then I will make sure that those questions, because really as councillors, we are the vehicle so that our constituents and our community can ask those questions to city staff.
Right, exactly. And you mentioned the police board. You've been there at a very good time where this new police chief coming in has done a great job, and the police has really moved forward in this community.
Yes, both Chief Stevenson and Deputy Chief McLaughlin. I'm privileged to be able to work with them in the capacity of the Police Services Board. I was also with them when we had the 5-year anniversary street party for the Neighborhood Resource Center, watching through some of their innovations, such as doing the jump station at Station Mall. And really they have a very holistic approach in terms of policing, and you'll hear them both preach this, and I certainly support it, is that it's not just about, catching the criminal and locking them up. It's really about the approach that issues that we have in our community, it's really a community health issue, and how do we all band together and have the right people around the table for facing issues such as, opioid use in our community and things like that. So it's not just that one prong approach that, we're just going to lock them up. It's really about creating that environment. And the one interesting piece that's been happening with policing here, which is very innovative, is having a nurse go out on patrols for mental health calls. And that has really been an amazing tool, also a very innovative tool, in that other communities in policing are looking at that same model. So I really applaud both the chief and the deputy chief and police services staff for looking at alternative solutions for combating, especially mental health calls were up 300%. So how do we deal with those issues so that people aren't going into crisis? So really I applaud police services and being more involved in terms of a board perspective. You also get to know the individuals more, and really I respect what our community policing does, and I really applaud people that choose that as their profession. So it's definitely given me a different perspective on what policing really does entail. It's not just about locking up the bad guys.
There you go. The viewers got a snapshot of something I didn't even know, that a nurse goes out on the calls. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we do have a special team that does that, as far as sort of like broaching both that community health perspective, avoiding mental health crisis, and making sure that people are well and functioning.
And it's great because I met the new chief too, and this is the kind of guy that would go out for a coffee with you if you had something to talk about. And it's just something I have not seen in this community in 30 years of being here.
Mr. Chief Stevenson is very down to earth.
Oh, big time.
He was doing controls at the parade. You'll see him out directing traffic. Yes, you'll see him out having coffee. You'll see him walking the beat. So he's very much that leader that he does what everyone else does. He's not going to ask one of his officers to do something if he's not willing to do it himself. So as far as a leadership perspective, both Chief Stevenson and Deputy Chief McLaughlin, I think, are very amazing examples in how to be a humble leader and also be a strong leader and also be a good example for the entire police services in our community.
Excellent. Let's move on, Lisa. What was your biggest challenge as being a counselor in 2019?
I would say 2019 for me had definitely some ebbs and flows. I had some really great successes. I also had some personal losses, and really realizing that all of us at council, even though we may not always perceive that way because we don't always agree with one another, people really rallied around me and supported me. Right. I have to give a shout out to definitely my ward mate, Luke Dufour, because I had to travel back and forth quite a bit this year, and he had my back, fielded a lot of calls, and I hope to be able to do the same for him if the need ever arises. So really the biggest challenge for me was that balance between having some personal family responsibilities that were over and above, and really learning to rely upon my colleagues at council, Mayor Provenzano as well, and staff, all of whom have been extremely supportive, and understanding that sometimes you do have to take a step back and allow people to help you. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's really supported me in 2019, because it has been a difficult year for me, and I'm looking forward to having a fresh perspective and some fresh energy for 2020.
Wonderful. I saw that teamwork between yourself and Councillor Luke Dufour early on when you had that Ward 2 town hall at the soup kitchen. That night I was there, and it showed you how well you worked together, because it was a lot of work to put that on that night.
It is, and I think as a council we are more we're collaborators. We're not competitors, and while we won't always agree on issues and we may vote differently, we're really all there for the same common good, and I really feel that we are a cohesive team. And especially from a ward perspective, it's only in myself and Councillor Dufour's best interest that we work together as a team, because working together then we can only make our ward stronger and help our community. And I think we both have that same perspective, and I think that's just what keeps us able to respond to our constituents in a more timely fashion, and also in a more meaningful fashion as well.
Right. Stay right there, Lisa. We'll take a couple of commercial messages, and we'll be right back with On Point right after these messages.
Thanks.
Government of Ontario established a $100 million affordability fund to help Ontarians who don't qualify for low-income conservation programs ease the burden of their electricity bill. Whether you rent or own your home, as long as you pay your electric bill, you could qualify. There are 3 levels of support available. The first is a home energy kit with upgrades like smart power bars and LED light bulbs. The second includes Energy Star appliances that help keep things cool during the hot summer months. The third is for electrically heated homes so that your power bills don't break the bank during those long Canadian winters. Plus, all upgrades, including installation, are completely free of charge. Visit affordabilityfund.org or call 1-855-494-FUND to find out if you qualify.
Welcome back to ONNPoint. I'm Andy Martins. We're live on ONTV. We're live on Facebook, and I promised you 2 big shows to start the year, and we've got them. Yesterday, MP Terry Sheehan, and today, Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen. Lisa, welcome back to ONNPoint.
Thanks, Andy.
No problem. A year ago, I remember when you first started as councillor, there was some problem with Ward 2 break-ins, and you had a town hall and meetings and stuff. How is that going? If you can give our viewers an update in Ward 2, are those problems still there, or have they improved in the last year?
Certainly, I can give you an update. There was, during campaigning, a lot of discussion primarily in certain neighborhoods concerning break and enters. So that kind of then, fell into after election as, something that both Councillor Dufour and I wanted to follow up on. So we did do a town hall for all of Ward 2, not just specific neighborhoods, because we wanted it to be very much about Ward 2 in its totality. Mm-hmm. We have seen a decrease across the board of break and enter crimes. So there's been a pretty steady decline in terms of statistical data, in terms of both, calls for service, reported break and entries and that sort of thing. So we are seeing a decline in that type of activity. Also, I'm having much less in terms of constituents contact me, whether or not they're potentially contacting police services and totally not contacting myself as a councillor or Councillor Dufour, that we don't know. But we are seeing across the board in our community a decrease in some of those petty crimes in terms of break and enters, whether it's home or vehicle assaults, that sort of thing. So, definitely police services have taken more of an active approach in having more patrols out. So it's hard to say what is the cause and effect, but what we are seeing in the data is that there is a decrease. And I'm also seeing, from just my personal perspective as city councillor, less calls and less inquiries in terms of crime.
Right, and let's be clear for the viewers, this is something that Councillor Vezeau-Allen and Luc Dufour inherited. This was a problem. The former councillors of Ward 2 had to deal with this as well. Am I correct on that, Lisa?
Almost definitely, and I lived, for over 7 years on Forest Avenue, and we would always get almost every spring, you could put your clock on it that everyone's garage or shed would get broken into looking for new bikes and that sort of thing. So, I grew up in Ward 2, I grew up in those neighborhoods, and I can always remember sort of the cycle of break and entries. So it's definitely always been around and existed and will continue to exist. I'm not saying that it's completely eliminated. It's just that I'm hearing less of that from my constituents and also seeing a decrease in crime stats.
It's your great work you've done. Were you able to bring that when you got on the police board earlier this year in 2019? Were you able to bring those Ward 2 issues to the police board as such?
Well, both Chief Stevenson was at the Ward 2 meeting. So he's very much front and center. As well, I have attended some neighborhood meetings through the Neighborhood Resource Center with Constable Kovacs, who's there at the Neighborhood Resource Center now. So just some other issues for different people in different neighborhoods that we've been listening to. So it's really not something that I'm doing. I'm just there as their city councilor to listen. It's really, I have to give kudos to police services for opening those lines of communication, creating those spaces for neighbors to get together, creating that need for meetings and facilitating them. So, I think it's definitely a multi-pronged approach. I think the key piece is that we are really identifying it and trying to find solutions and communicating that to constituents and being very open and transparent.
Exactly. Now let's move on to something that's equally as exciting and Grocer for Good is Lisa's idea. She's the founder, and that's going to launch in the next 30 days, and we're all looking forward to it. If you can let our viewers know how that came to be in Sault Ste. Marie.
Certainly. When I moved back to Sault Ste. Marie in early 2018, my primary goal was to start a social enterprise to employ people with barriers. I do have a son on the autism spectrum, but as well I've worked with, through both my paid career and voluntary career, people facing barriers, whether it's other intellectual disabilities, whether they might have a learning disability, or just other sensory or anxiety issues that then affect their ability to be gainfully employed. So that was always in my wheelhouse to do. And I just kind of sat back and waited for the right opportunities. So in June of 2019, I filed the incorporation paperwork for Grocer for Good Ability Development Program. And we will be opening a small grocery store model in a designated food desert on Gore Street. It's going to be 133 Gore. And we will have an initial pilot with 9 participants from Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program. So the way the model works is you have your charitable board and your charitable entity, which is the Grocer for Good Ability Development Program. And we've collaborated with Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program. So it's a model that I would like to see go throughout Ontario, and a grocery store model in terms of skills development, training, and promoting, I think, success in that really has all the elements. If someone is really not comfortable with working with the public or working with cash, they can coordinate inventory and stock shelves. Someone who is more mechanically inclined can help with repairs and maintenance with the facility. Someone who's great with numbers and wants to work on the computer can do cash and learn cash handling. And really the key piece of that is skills development, paid employment that they can then transfer into other employment opportunities, but also look to other businesses and understanding that while someone may have a barrier to employment, given the right supports, they can become an amazing employee. So that is something that we want to see as well, is people moving from the grocery store into other paid employment within other organizations, and as well just have those lifelong skills that will carry them through their adulthood into success.
You answered that exceptionally well. This concept that you are the founder of is so important to Sault Ste. Marie, possibly to Ontario, other locations, in many ways, really, isn't it, Lisa?
Most definitely. And while we have had some delays, we took over the space in October, and I really have to put a shout out to my entire board of directors, to Paul Skornianki from Ergo Office. We've had some amazing support from Ontario Works, ODSP, private donors such as PUC, and really it's the community rallying together, the Algoma Autism Foundation, rallying together to support this model and to make it happen. So while, you know, I filed the paperwork and did some of the background and will continue to do that, it's really all of us working together that will make this model a success, and everyone believes in it. So I met the first 6 participants, and it really solidified that what we're doing is the right thing. And while there have been some delays in us getting open,
right,
it's about really doing it the right way, making sure that everything is in place when we do open so that everyone is successful. And right now the key piece is employing that program manager. So
right,
while I'm founder and president, I'm a volunteer, and I'll continue with the business development and going out and finding money, because that's what I do well. But for the day-to-day operations, we really need a strong program manager and the employment committee. So I'm completely arm's length. I have nothing to do with placements or hiring. You know, we're hopeful that we will have someone in place that can really take this program and run with it, and I'm very excited for that to happen, as we all are, from, you know, the neighbors on Gore Street to our community partners, to our donors, to our board of directors, to, you know, really, it's been such a positive piece of my 2019, and now I'm really looking forward to being able to put 100% energy behind it, as well as our board of directors and our volunteers.
And it's going to be done right. I knowing you know, speed is not the key here. You want to do it right versus having to backtrack.
Correct. So that's why we need the right person in place to manage the day-to-day operations and coordinate the programming. That's really the key piece. And we want that person to have autonomy in what they're doing. So a lot of things such as, you know, what kind of cash register should we have? That's not been decided on, because that should be the program manager.
Right.
You know, I've done the pricing and things like that, but we really want the program manager to take what has been created and make it their own, with all of us board of directors and community collaborators there for supports. But it's really the guiding factor of that program manager that will really help to bring the next phase into the Grocer for Good.
Exactly, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming on ONNPoint. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you're welcome. We'll be back to wrap up the show right after these messages.
Past year, we've been celebrating our 65th anniversary, dating back to services originating in our community in 1954, which is quite some time ago. It's been a great opportunity this past year to recognize the pioneers, the stakeholders that worked tirelessly to create what we are today. I'm grateful for everything that the families 65 years ago and the people that assembled the organization have done in order for us to achieve the success that we're experiencing 65 years later.
In your home, lighting is just as important as style.
With PowerView motorization from Hunter Douglas, you can schedule your shades to light up the room, create privacy, or both, automatically. No hands required.
So your shades will always be in the right place at the right time in style. And it's only from Hunter Douglas.
Welcome back to ONNPoint. As usual, we're always live on ONTV and live on Facebook. We hope you enjoyed that show with Ward 2 Councillor Lisa Vezeau-Allen. That's it, folks. We're back next week with a couple of more shows, and have yourself a great rest of the week. I'm Andy Martins for ONNPoint. We'll see you next time.